Good morning and thank you for joining me again for another devotional. Today we're looking at Colossians chapter 1 and verse 23. If indeed you continue in the faith, grounded and steadfast, and are not moved away from the hope of the gospel which you heard, which was preached to every creature under heaven, of which I, Paul, became a minister. And just before we deal with verse 23, I wanted to remind us of what we read in verse 21 and 22. And you, who once were alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, yet now he has reconciled in the body of his flesh through death, to present you holy and blameless and above reproach in his sight. And we were rejoicing really during our previous devotional that we are reconciled to him. God was in Christ reconciling the world to himself on the cross, and that's an awesome thought. And we've been reconciled to him through faith. But we also saw that faith has an end goal. It's not just about receiving, pardon for your sin to be able to get into heaven at the end. Look what he says again. What's the end goal? He says to present you holy and blameless and above reproach in his sight. That one day we will stand before him holy. We will stand before him blameless and above reproach in his sight, conformed to the image of the Son. That's the work of Christ. But now let's look at verse 23 again. He says, if indeed you continue in the faith. And there it is. There's a condition. And sometimes we hear that, that we have no part to play in our salvation. And yet the scriptures teach that actually we do. We're told that we need to persevere, and that's the key word this morning, perseverance. He says, if indeed you continue in the faith, grounded and steadfast, and are not moved away from the hope of the gospel which you heard. Grounded and steadfast. We need to be steadfast. And these Colossian believers also needed to be steadfast because of the teachings that were being introduced into the fellowship and were troubling them. And very often it might not be something that pulls you completely off course, but something that is added to the simple gospel. That, actually, you need to do this, but you need to follow this law, and you need to follow this ritual, or you need to observe that day, or whatever. And these are just add-ons. And I believe some of this was going on in Colossae. But it applies to us today. We need to be careful too that we don't add things on. What we need to do is to continue steadfast in faith. He says, doesn't he? He says, and not moved away from the hope of the gospel. And that word to be moved away means to be dissuaded from the hope of the gospel. And so he's warning them here, don't allow yourselves to be dissuaded from the hope of the gospel. And when we speak about hope, we speak about future, don't we? Think about the promises for the future. That each one of us, we have a future. A glorious future in the Lord. And that is the hope that we have. It's not all about the here and now. Right now we're walking by faith, but we have hope for a glorious future. He says, don't be dissuaded. Don't take your eyes off of that hope, off of the hope of the gospel. And notice the definite article there, the hope of the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ, which you heard. There's one message. It's the gospel that is the power of God unto salvation. And so it's not just about receiving it when you first heard it, but it's about persevering in that faith. It's about staying steadfast and grounded and not allowing anything to dissuade you, to move you off course. And he says, which was preached to every creature under heaven, of which I, Paul, became a minister. This is the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ that the apostles preached. And this is what we need to hold on to, especially in this age of pluralistic thinking where all roads lead to Rome, so to speak. It doesn't matter really what kind of faith you have, as long as you've got some kind of faith in God. because we'll all get there eventually. That's not what the scriptures teach. The scriptures teach about a unique gospel. The gospel that was preached by the apostles. It is the gospel, it is the message that has the power. It is the power of God unto salvation to all those that believe. And so we need to hold on to this. We need to be steadfast and loyal to the truth. And so I want to leave that with you today. We've got to keep going. Keep persevering. Don't allow yourself to be blown off course. May God bless you. Have a wonderful day.